Okay, I like this one because I think that you all know it. It's pretty straightforward, but it's worth just clarifying. Okay. Triangle BCD is congruent to triangle FED. So if we are going to name them, we can name them, but I'm going to mark them as well. Okay, so, well, let's name them first. We can say that angle B is congruent to, well, B in the name of the first triangle is in position 1 as far as where the letters are. So what's in position 1 for the other triangle? That's angle F. B and F are congruent. So this is congruent to this. And we need the names in this case because it could be that that's congruent to that. Like visually, if you look at it, they could just slide over on top of each other. When we say that that's congruent to that, we know that one flips over across this line of symmetry. Oops, that line of symmetry. It would reflect across, and that this B would land on F. So we know that from the names, and we really need to know the names in this case to be able to tell. So what corresponds with C? Angle C is congruent to, well, that's the middle letter, and the middle letter here is E. So angle C is congruent to angle E. And lastly, and let's mark those. Angle C is congruent to angle E. And lastly, for the angles, the letter D is on the end of each one. So we've got angle D is congruent to angle D. The problem with that, though, is we can't name this as D. So even though it's a single letter there, we really are not allowed to name it as that because there are multiple angles coming off this vertex. So what we're going to do is we're going to call that angle, let's go from the top to D and then out like here. Call it the angle like that, so CDB. Angle CDB is congruent to angle, let's go from the top, 2D and out, EDF. And you can see that that matches with what we have. D last letter, I'm sorry, C middle letter to D last letter to B front letter. E middle letter to D last letter to F first letter. Corresponds based on the name, okay? Now, you might ask me, but Mr. Massey, will you mark that wrong if I just write angle D there? Yeah, I'm going to mark it wrong because it's wrong. It's just not correct to just say D when no one knows which angle you're talking about. And you can say, but Mr. Massey, you know. And I would say as a response, I only know that because I already know it. But if you were trying to explain it to somebody else or tell somebody else this, then that wouldn't be a helpful name for that angle because they wouldn't know what you're talking about. So you can't just say, I'm going to assume that you know what is going on, and so therefore I don't have to be specific about it because that's not how you're going to get your points. It's not correct. So I'm going to say, yeah, if you have an angle or a vertex like vertex D where you have multiple angles coming off of it and you just name it as angle D, it's not going to be right. Okay. Now, those are the angles, but we need to do the corresponding sides. So let's take a look. We could do B to D is congruent to F to D. B to D is congruent to F to D. And you notice how I'm putting the angle symbol in front of the angles and the segment symbol above the segment letters? Mr. Massey, if we don't do that, is it wrong? Yes. Yes, it is. Because that's required. Because you need to tell us what are you talking about. And by putting the angle, by putting the letter, by the segment bar across the top, you're telling us, not only you're telling me what we're talking about, that we're talking about a side or segment, but you're telling me that you know what you're talking about. Because if you don't put it, it makes me think you don't actually really know that that is required there. So, yep, it's required. Now, what else? What about C to B? That corresponds with E to F. C to B. Side C to B corresponds with side E to F. And lastly, we've gone B to D, first to last letter, corresponds with F to D, first to last letter. We've gone C to B, middle to the first, corresponds with E to F, middle to the first. And by the way, if we're marking them, that we've done that side, we've done this side, and so now we have to do C to D and E to D. So side CD is congruent to side ED. Yep, I need to put that to be right. Okay, so those are the 3 angle pairs and the 3 side pairs that are congruent. And we could put the marks to show that. And you should know there's six pairs of congruent parts in 2 congruent triangles, the 3 angle pairs and the 3 side pairs.